And good evening, everybody, and welcome to Going nuCLEar, full-blown coverage of the land. I am Ethan Greenberg, and I am joined by my co-host, Mike Rasinski, and our special guest tonight is Matt Fontana. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. How are you tonight?
It's a lot of fun. One of my favorite times of year, free agency, NFL. Cavs, obviously, well, not tonight so much, but they're playing well, so it's a great time. It's an exciting time for sure. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here with us. And unfortunately, Heather I got to say, she got a better offer tonight. She got courtside tickets to go see the Cavs game. So I really can't blame her for choosing that.
Although she's not watching much of a game right now, so I don't know.
So we are a part of the Fanatical Elves Network, a subsidiary of Fans First Sports Network. So, Matt, again, thank you so much for being here with us. You are a staple of the Cleveland sports media. You've been in it for a long time. So currently, you are at Big Play, correct?
The Big Play Show, Matt Fontana, we air on Thursday evenings, usually about 8 o'clock. And then we just announced it recently, but the show is also going to be airing now on the Rock Network, the Rock Sports Entertainment TV channel. So check your local listings. My show is going to be on Fridays from 4 to 5, and Big Play is actually going to have an hour pretty much every day of different shows. So, yeah, that's going well. Going to get back with ESPN Radio here coming up, and everybody can just follow me on Twitter. At Matt Fontaine 83, I always repost the shows and let people know when I'm going to be on ESPN Radio. So it's good. It's been good to keep busy.
Yeah. Now you've got. Let's see. Now, Matt, I can't remember correctly. I know you've got at least one child. How it's like keeping you busy.
Oh yeah, 2 now. So they'll be 4 and 2 this summer coming up. So 3 and 1, and our son is quite the adventurer right now. He's getting that little kind of personality to him. He's like they call him three-nagers because he's already like acting like a teenager even though he's 3. And then our daughter she's in that awkward stage where she's ready to run like faster. Like, so I'm just running behind her, like trying not to let her fall everywhere. And then she, with the nice weather, she's figured out how to ride a scooter. Like, she took our son's like little scooter, and she's not even 2 yet, and she's already like whipping around the driveway in the scooter. So I have a bad feeling like my daughter's going to be the adventurous one, like running around, jumping off stuff, and the one getting hurt.
How do you even have quiet time right now? How come are they in bed right now? They're not crawling over you?
Yep, they're in bed. That's the nice thing is to be able to do bedtime. It's they're usually down by about 8 o'clock. Daughter likes waking up on this like 5:15, 5:30 thing right now, so we needed to push that back an hour. I thought daylight savings time would help, but it really hasn't. So
no, never
early bedtime, early risers.
Half the time during this podcast, Ryan, our 4-year-old, comes crashing through, and so I'm glad yours are asleep.
Yeah,
I mean, they're all the way upstairs. So
okay, that's nice. That is real nice. So, so wait, what exactly? So, Rock Entertainment Group. I mean, that's part of the, obviously Dan Gilbert, right? Correct.
The channel that he launched. I think there's some thoughts that the Cavs might be there one day, as everything is going on with Bally's now, FanDuel Sports Network and everything like that. So, yeah, Dan Gilbert kind of launched his own TV network. They do a lot of high school sports on there. And they, obviously have a full channel 24 hours a day. So we were happy to be able to step in and be able to give them a little bit of content over there from Big Play. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. We'll have a show on every day. From 4 to 5. Drennan will be on there. The Kyles have a show, like Chuck, Marie, and Kyle. Their show is going to be on there. We have a secret show that I don't know if I'm allowed to tell people about because I haven't seen the announcement for it yet. But it's 2 long-time Cleveland sports radio people, and I worked with both of them early in my career. So a little teaser for everybody out there. And then our show will be on Fridays from 4 to 5. So it's going to be pretty cool.
Oh, that is definitely cool. What do you think about, just in general, I was going to ask you, the radio business, the media, the fact that Odyssey just laid off a ton of people. I mean, why would any of us, or, it's like you're in the business. I kind of am on the periphery, it's not my full-time thing, but why would I want to be in the business when there's always these issues?
People would always tell me, like, even early in my career, like, oh, radio's going to die one day, radio's going to die one day. And I said, it's going to change. There will be changes. And I think even just the platforms that are available now, with video and podcasting and YouTube and Spotify and all that. My comeback has always been a couple of points. Number one, you cannot and will never replace local sports and local news. And that's not to say, like, obviously I do ESPN radio when we talk nationally, but people want to tune in. When the Browns signed Myles Garrett, they want to tune into Clevelanders talking about nothing but Myles Garrett for, the majority of that. When the Cavs are on a 15-game win streak, you want to talk about that. So I've always said that, I think local sports will have a foothold, and especially in Cleveland. You can't say that about every, market, but especially in Cleveland, that'll never change. And then I think just from a radio standpoint, the spontaneity of it, the ability to be able to take callers, to be able to interact, like when there is breaking news, especially right now with everything going on, with free agency, when that breaking news, you can't get that with podcasts, and there's a lot of great podcasts out there. And I, am kind of more in that podcasting world now just because my show isn't necessarily live right away, but, and I listen to podcasts and I enjoy it. So I think it's always an ebb and flow. I do think that there was a sprint over the last couple of years where there was a lot of podcasting industry and there was a lot of companies, there was a lot of shows that started, and kind of to your point, Ethan, it sucks, but I think unfortunately some of those are maybe starting to get weeded out a little bit, or, there was this boom, so I think it might even be starting to swing back a little bit. But, I've always said this too, if you put out good content and you build a good community and you build a good fan base, people will find you wherever it is at. And it doesn't have to be tens of thousands of listeners. If you're pretty consistent on a good group of people that enjoy your show, you're going to be able to make that work for you for sure.
Yeah, I'll say, ever since college, I've lived, across the U.S. and actually a couple places overseas. And one of the things I've loved about the change in radio, like you're talking about, is I'm able to get the games, the local sports coverage, the podcast, wherever I am. So it really makes you feel more connected, really, to your hometown, that you didn't have that option unless, late at night you tuned into 1100 a.m. and you tried to get that, as the signal was bouncing off the ozone layer and back down to you. But so what got you interested in doing, sports radio in the first place?
Actually, Howard Stern for me, because I just wanted to. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of people. I would say I'd love to know a straw poll of people, like, I don't know about now the generation, but like, I'm 35, so like I just remember when Stern was still on terrestrial, and I made my parents buy me a CD player that had a radio in it so I could listen to 98.5 when he was on 98.5 in Cleveland.
Yes.
And I wanted to listen to Stern every morning. So then I thought about, all right, that's radio. And then I just loved sports. I played sports my whole life. I'm, diehard Browns, Indians, Guardians, Cavs fan, Ohio State fan. So then I was like, oh, this can actually be, a career. And that's what I went to college for. And then it really, my time at ESPN Cleveland all started with just an email from my aunt that she goes, hey, they're looking for interns. And I applied for the second semester of my sophomore year, and that was 2008. And I was able to turn that into a 13-year run, which was, awesome. And being able to be a big play now for 2 years, coming up on 2 years, which has been phenomenal as well. It's been awesome.
Yeah, that is amazing. And I know that you've done, or you did, some teaching at the Ohio Media School. So did you kind of pass along what you just were talking about, that same sort of advice to your students about the industry and what they can do and how to build an audience and those sorts of things?
Yeah, I really love that, because when I started out, I can't tell you, how many people took time to show me something, or stayed late to teach me how to do this. And I always prided myself on being able to do that for the next generation, because I just had so many people that helped me out. It'd be a disservice to not pass that on, to the next. And, to hear so many people that said, Matt really did spend time with me, or, went out of his way. And, this industry can have people that have, big egos, or it is, it's hard to do. So there are people that come in and that, hey, we're just doing our show, we're focusing on this. They didn't have time, to do it, but I always did, so I really said, if I have the time to be able to show somebody how to do something, or take time to talk to anybody, I'm going to do it, because I want to be able to pass that on. And, just think about so many things that I learned, some the hard way, on how to navigate this or how to do this, job and to figure it all out. If I can make somebody else's path a little bit easier, I'm here to do it. People sometimes, like, oh, that's competition. I'm like, hey, if they're better than me and they truly are, then they deserve it. I'm a big believer in people should get what they deserve, or, if they deserve to have that slot or that accolade, then, let the best person win for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Who were now you talked about Howard Stern, and I still listen to Stern every morning. I'll tune into Stern 7 to 9. Then I'll turn on ESPN Cleveland 9 to 1. Then I'll listen to the end of Stern. And then I listen to ESPN Cleveland, from about 3 until I'm done with work. I work from home, so thankfully I can do that. But, other than Stern, were there sports broadcasting people that you really admired? We've had so many legendary sportscasters in Cleveland, but were there any in particular that really you were just like, wow?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be here today without Riz. That's just, and he knows that. I've told him that. He always yells at me when I say that. But like, to start out, like, the fact that I grew up here and played football for Friday Night Touchdown to work alongside Tony Rizzo, like that, I'm not gonna lie, like it really, like, never even clicked to me, like, when I was doing the show with him, just because he was, it's like there's almost two different versions of Tony Rizzo that I know. The one that I know growing up here and is a legend Fox 8 guy, and then there's like the Tony Rizzo I worked with that, did look out for me, that I went on Arizona trips and to a Final Four with, and golfing at Nemacolin and all that. So it's definitely Riz, but just even outside of him, like, starting out working with Kenny Rhoda, working with Brenda, Munch, Michael Regai, then there was just such a group of guys that looked out for me. Will Burge, TJ Zuppe, Chris Fedor, all those guys really taught me a lot. But, getting a chance to work with Aaron, Goldhammer, was great. Aaron taught me so much. I had so much fun working with Emin and Gerard. Like, those two guys, like, of all the shows I did, working with them was, some of the best, some of the most fun I had. Danny and Nick doing ECT with those guys was the most fun that I had. It was great. So, like, yeah, there's a long list. Getting to know Jim Donovan, that's one of my favorite moments. Not to say like I thought I made it, but just the shock that I was in the Browns press box. One was a long time ago, and I was just walking to my seat, and Jim just said hi. He goes, "Hi, Matt." And I'm like, oh my God, Jim Donovan knows who I am. Like, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, So I think a lot. John Telich, everybody looks up to JT, just there's been so many in this town that have been great. But, if I had to single one out, it's definitely, Riz. Just learning with him, being on the show with him, like, it really meant a lot to me.
So speaking of Jim Donovan, that's a pretty cool story. A lot of stories have been written about him, obviously, over this last year. And one of the themes that kept coming out is just how much he would constantly prepare for games and announcing games. And he made it sound so easy, but it's not easy. I was wondering, I'm sure you see the same thing, where we listen to your show, you make it sound so easy, but there's a lot of prep that goes on in the background. I was just wondering if you could walk us through a little bit. How do you prep for like a 3-hour, radio show or something like that?
I mean, I think the easiest answer when people would always, they'd ask that, and I go, I never stop prepping. Where everything, and it's trust me, driven my wife completely insane, is that, I'm on Twitter, I'm sitting there, just even things, in day-to-day life, when you talk about, the sports are one thing, but I think we all listen to a show sometimes for the not sports or for the life stories or things like that. So it's like the thing of, I'm never not prepping. I'm always thinking about it. Like, I have notes on my phone of segment ideas, of things for, I do time hop, like all this stuff. And I just add to it all the time. So that way, if, hey, we're trying to come up with a new segment here, I got 10 things I've written down over the last couple of months here. What do we think about this? Like, it's always to be in that mindset. It's not easy, specifically about Jim, like you mentioned, like the prep that he went into it. And I fully admit this, and I told Jim this too. Like, I ripped off so much stuff from him because I love doing play-by-play. And I did play-by-play at KNR for a long time in high school. And if you would listen to me, there were just so many things that Jim said, because I would just, they say emulate your heroes, right? And in my play-by-play hero is Jim Donovan, and it always has been. And just his little descriptors, how he would say, two receivers near side to the left. Then that instantly go, oh, that means they're going this way, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
I just ripped off so much from him. But yeah, his prep was meticulous because you talk about the wealth of information that you have. And this was told to me about prepping for a show, but I think it also preps for play-by-play. You actually only use about 10% of what you prep, which is crazy because then you sit there and you're like, I prepared all these notes, but did you actually get to all of them in the show? Or as much as these stats you brought up and you did this deep dive here and there, you might not have even gotten to it. And then it comes back to the inherent. You want the biggest amount of prep that you can get because you're only going to use 10% and you only prep this much, now you're down to this much, right? So it's like if you need to do it. Riz told me a famous story too that his first solo show, he did all his prep, he wrote it all down, and he goes, I ripped through all of it. Literally everything I wanted to. He goes, I looked down to the clock. I was 7 minutes into a 3-hour show. And he goes, I don't know what I'm going to do now for the rest of the show. So, I mean, it's a lot of prep. It's a lot of, sitting down. And I think the easiest thing I always just try to do was put myself in the shoes of who we are. We're Cleveland fans. What do we want to talk about? What do we want to talk about today? And people, I understand when they're like, talk about the Browns every day, or you bring up this Myles Garrett thing every day. And I'm like, yeah, but that's also what a lot of us would like to talk about. The thing is, what angle can I put on it? What twist can I put on it? And it's not just, being a hot take artist or for clicks or anything like that, but is there an angle that we haven't thought about yet? Or is there something we can refresh the discussion about here? So, yeah, I mean, prep is the motherhood of all, sports radio. It's I can't another one too. I can't guarantee you're going to have a good show, but I know you're not going to have a good show if you don't prep. That's something that was told to me a long time ago. It's you can't do any well, I shouldn't say that, but very rarely can you just sit down and do a 3-hour show without prep.
Yeah. I don't like to have the blank mind, blank stare thing going on. I've always got to have those notes. So yeah, that's all. That's just, all great advice that you got. And it's something I've learned too. I know you talk about emulating Donovan. I emulate Joe Tate. I emulate, everything's, cross the timeline into the forecourt, line to the lane, put it up, put it in, that sort of thing. I mean, that's obviously I'm covering women's basketball, and we'll get to that a little later. I don't get to see many wham with the right hand there. But it was so nice we had Tim Alcorn on, and he is really setting himself up nicely in Cleveland too.
He's a lot of nights wrestles with kids. I can't tell you how many nights I just pop my earbud in and turn on the app, and I listen to Tim and Jim, and they're really great. Tim's really good at his job for sure.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So you're also you're a Batman guy. What did you make of the Nick Chubb Instagram post after Andrew Berry said, well, we're going to let him test the free agent waters?
He actually DM'd me and they were like, can you shed any light on this panel? The thing that he posted. And I thought I recognized where it was from, but I did the Google and there's like another part about he's in a fight and the next panel says something about I don't need to win. And I was like, oh, maybe that's a shot at Myles Garrett, because at that time Myles was talking about winning and all that kind of stuff. But no, I really think that's just, it's the unfortunate reality of where the Browns sit. If Nick Chubb's name was not Nick Chubb, and if he wasn't who he was, he wouldn't be. Like, there's no way. Running back who's played this many years, who's had back-to-back injuries, lower body injuries, by the way. And even when he came back last year, it's unfortunate. He just didn't seem to have the vision back. And again, coming off that knee injury, you wanted to give him every benefit of the doubt to come back. And, I want him to play here. Like, as far as the fans go, as far as what the team needs to do, like, I don't want to see Nick Chubb play anywhere else. And if that means having just to eat up a roster spot and a couple $1 million for him, well, that's sorry. Like, they waste money on worse. Trust me. They've spent that on worse players. And I still want them to draft a guy. And the whole list of running backs that are coming out, it's a stacked class. I want one, maybe even two, but I'd love to have Nick Chubb back. And it's just unfortunate because if it wasn't him, I don't think this would even be a discussion. I don't think he'd be here. So we'll see. And I think it's hard for him to probably realize that, because I would imagine, I had this conversation with somebody too. It was like, if this was 2 years into the future, I don't think there's a question Nick Chubb is retiring. And he's just going to say, you know what, at this age, at this time, or whatever. But he still feels like he's got gas left in the tank, and that's what's going to make it hard. Is it would just be easier to kind of ride off into the sunset and say, hey, I got injured and, I'm at this age, but Nick probably still feels like he can play. And it's also just happened to coinciding in a time where nobody needs any running backs. Like nobody with the draft class that's coming out. I do think there's a shift, and I think Saquon's been a part of that, but there's just some really good backs in the NFL now, but I just think it's a really hard time for him to get out there and try to find a job. We saw some of the moves today and some of the guys that went around the NFL, but it's like, and I feel for him because I think it's just the worst case scenario where the Browns are pinched here. They need to make some tough decisions, and there really is probably not going to be a big market out there for Nick Chubb one way or another.
Right. Now, how much of his struggles last year do you think were recovering from the injury, and how much of it also was just the general scheme of the offense, and the whole thing was an absolute disaster? So I don't know how to judge him.
And was bad. They were not good. They were banged up. That Andy Dickerson was not getting out of them what they needed to. But I'll just say, like, there were just, and I'm nitpicking. I'm nitpicking to the nth degree here on this. There were just some runs where I'm just like, and again, I'm sitting at home on my couch, with my kids jumping on me. Like, it's a little easier from, the camera angle. But, like, there's just cuts where I'm like, I think Nick Chubb 3 years ago makes that cut or does this or does that. But it's also a feel thing. It's, again, he was out of football for that long. And again, the offensive line was bad. And that's where I hope the Browns would sit there and say they saw a little bit, to be able to bring him back. And how much do you just chalk up the whole season to, like you said, the scheme was just bad. They were just caught, they were just kind of caught in purgatory where it was like they tried this Watson stuff. That didn't work. Then they got to make this shift after he gets hurt. Then they're kind of caught somewhere in the middle. Where did Dorsey's influence start? Where did Dorsey's influence end? Then he starts calling plays, and it was just like a jumbled mess, at that point. So I hope the Browns look at it that way, and they just say, hey, there were some mitigating factors in there. Just from what I've understood or what I've even been told, and I don't think this is any groundbreaking thing. The Browns know how bad their offensive line was last year. They truly sit there, and it's not even to make excuses for Deshaun Watson, but there is an element to that. They just know, frankly, how bad it was for a couple of different reasons. So I think if you can chalk that up in some positions, you chalk that up for Nick Chubb a little bit as well.
Right. Talking about people and injuries, you're also, first of all, I heard you had a what was it? Big weekend at the Big Play Ryder Cup. Big drive there.
Drive to finish it on out. We're at Dave, Big Play Dave. He's got a simulator in his garage, so he finally invited us all over. It was a 3 versus 3 best ball match, and we went to 3 playoff holes. We were tied at the end of it. Then the simulator crashed, so we had to redo it. We eventually had to play par 4, little dog leg left, and I will fully admit that I was not driving the ball well. I actually put my driver away on 18. We were tied on 18. There was a par 5. And I put the driver away because I was just I get this thing in my head about when I'm inside that I'm going to hit, I'm a little taller. So I'm like worried I'm going to hit something. And Dave keeps telling me, you're not going to hit anything. He goes, you're not Shaq. You're not going to hit anything. But it was just in my head. So on the final hole, I said, you know what? I need to, if I hit something, I hit something. I finally hit a good drive, and we were able to. I think we parred, and then they bogeyed. So yeah, we got the win. That's in the bag. I'm waiting to release the T-shirts once we get the artwork done. So
very nice. Should Tiger Woods hang it up?
I hate that so much. I mean, I'm a big golf fan, obviously, and I want to see him at 7 events a year. I want to see him at the 4 majors. I want to see him at Pebble, the Pro-Am. I'd like to see him at Torrey. That's kind of his thing. I'd like to see him at Arnold's place, but the other place I really, really want to see him is at Jack's place. So if he's got to finagle that schedule to get those in and maybe not play like the PGA or something, that'd be great. But yeah, he ruptures his Achilles. I think the worst part of that was I think he was really having fun with that TGL. I think he was having a lot of fun with that TGL, which kind of maybe got him back in the game. I know his mother passed away, which is awful, but that's what I think really sucked was he was finally starting to get over these injuries and maybe found that love again, where again, I just need him to play 6 times a year. And the tour needed him to play 6 times a year. And if they end up getting this merger done, they're going to need his draw, they're going to need his camera time and all that. So I think it's a bad situation all around for quite a few people.
Yeah, I think, Matt, I think you're looking at notes that you don't have from me because you're hitting on things that I've got written down here. You talked about the merger. Is Liv going to survive? Not from a financial perspective of having the backing, but does anybody watch it?
They were cracking jokes about, what the 48 people or 40, however many people were watching. I mean, I think it's twofold. It's number one. I mean, I'm just going to tell you how I don't watch it because I don't like them. I don't, what they were, again, I know they were like, well, they're not really sports washing or they don't really stand for this. I'm going to be honest. They took a lot of guys that I really don't care about. The two guys they took that I wish I had back were Dustin Johnson and John Rahm, and maybe and Brooks Koepka. I wanted him to come back. I don't like Bryce DeChambeau. I don't like Sergio Garcia. I cannot stand Patrick Reed. They just took a bunch of guys, and I'm like, and the other thing is, outside of again about 5 guys, which are top guys, on any given weekend, do you really feel like you miss them? You still have Colin Morikawa, you still got Spieth, you still got Scotty Scheffler. Like, I would like Rahm and Cam Smith and those guys to be there, and I think they will be. I think eventually this is going to get figured out. Liv's not going to be able to keep doing this. Jay Monahan, who I think is a complete clown anyway, comes out and he's like, well, there's some Liv things that we could, implement in the tour. And I'm like, why? Like, what? This team aspect that you keep thinking is so cool? Like, we don't need that. It's cool because the Ryder Cup is one of the greatest events you could put on. And the TGL works from that standpoint. But I think the cool thing about the TGL is the simulator, that they're inside. I actually don't really care that they're playing on teams. That really doesn't matter so much to me. But, yeah, I mean, I think it'll get done. And I'll fully admit, too, there's some tournaments that you turn on and you're like, I don't know who these guys are. That happens. And it's not like, again, some of these other tournaments, not like all these guys are going to show up for them anyway. So I think it'll get done. And I just want to see, competitive golf. And I do want to see the biggest names out there. So we'll find out.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, before we turn to our next topic, which we're gonna hit on some Cavs here, let's just take a brief break so that the sponsors can have a word. You are tuned into the Going nuCLEar full-blown coverage of the land and the best doggone podcast in the land crossover here. We are part of the Fanatical Elves Network, a subsidiary of Fans First Sports Network. And welcome back, everybody. Best doggone podcast in the land, Going nuCLEar full-blown coverage of the land here on the Fanatical Elves Network and a subsidiary of the Fans First Sports Network. Ethan Greenberg, co-host Mike Rasinski, and our special guest, Matt Fontana. Matt, again, thank you so much for being here with us. So, Mike, do we have a score update here on the Cavs, on our hapless Cavs tonight?
Yeah, it looks like it's 75-63. The Nets are up. We're down a starter and our 2 big reserves. So Donovan Mitchell's not playing. Jerome is out and Hunter is also out. So you would hope, even with those 3 out, with how deep our bench is, we'd be able to keep it more competitive, especially against a team that's 22-42 coming off a back-to-back. But we'll see. Maybe in the second half here, maybe Brooklyn gets tired and we can make a Cavalanche run. But it's not looking good so far.
I don't know. Matt, what do you think about the Cavs? I mean, lately they have been snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. Is that something that we should be concerned about? You've been watching a lot of this. You've watched a lot of it up close and very close and personal. What are your thoughts about that?
It's they want to win these games, obviously. So I think you start with the want and the fact that they're able to, like you said, just late game, they get the production that they need. They get some shots. They get some stops. They really seem like a team that is experienced beyond their years. And they got guys that have been in the playoffs before in big moments. But it seems like they're so confident in what they do. And they're so confident in who they are that they believe that they can beat anybody on any given night, even when they're down 10 in the fourth quarter or they have this situation. And I think that's obviously going to bode well for the playoffs. But I also think they have such a confidence about themselves that they're not afraid to lose. And I think that's what sparks these late avalanches and sparks these runs, that they are just so confident in themselves that even if they slip up, and I said that about the Miami game, I said that about not the Portland game. Milwaukee's a solid team. Actually, it might have been the Portland game because it was the back-to-back, right? It was Portland, and I think Miami. But anyway, if they would have lost those games or either one of those games, that'd have been like, that's okay. Like, we feel good about where they're at. There's that confidence to be like, it's not like these other teams were one loss and everybody's turning on them and they should, pack it in and get ready for the lottery and stuff. Like, there's a confidence that I think the Cavs have built in themselves, but also built in this fan base where it's okay if they, like tonight, to be honest with you, they lose the Nets. What's going to happen tomorrow? I'm going to wake up and go, we're still the best team in the NBA. That's fine. So they had a bad night. So what? That's something that they can't take away from them. So I think it's been awesome, to see from that standpoint for this team and how, again, I think the biggest word I have is I think they're just so confident in who they are and what they want to do.
Yeah, I like too that it seems like during this latest 14-game win streak, they've been winning a different way every night. Whether it was defense, one night when against Milwaukee, it was, they'd go up big against one team, then they'd have to fight back, or they get down big and then they'd come back and win it. And you'd have a different leading score every night. You had Strus last night. During this 14-game win streak, you had Strus, Mitchell, Jerome, and Mobley all be leading scorers. So it's not one guy. It's not like Boston where you're just leaning on one guy. They're learning to win in different ways, which I think is going to help them in the playoffs too.
Different ways. Like, obviously everybody shoots a god-awful amount of threes, but like, you can get Evan Mobley down in the paint. Like, I think Jared Allen's offensive game has been really solid lately and had been a big part of this win streak. And then guys off the bench. Like, I think probably my favorite thing about the bench is the size they can get. When you put Dean Wade out there, when you have DeAndre Hunter, they can just they do so many things. Like, and I tweeted this, I think, after one of the games, and I go, it's got to be so annoying to try to game plan against the Cavs, or like how you're going to beat this team, because there's so many different elements that they do, and some they don't do all that well, but they're pretty darn good in a lot of different areas. And I just think that's where it's so hard. Like, okay, you want to take Mitchell away. Well, all right, now you're going to deal with Garland. You're going to have to deal with the dunks and the alley-oops. You're going to have to deal with the bench. All right, you want to take away their three-point shooting. They're just going to eat you live in the mid-range and the paint. Like, that's why they're so diverse. And a team that so many people were saying that they couldn't build it this way, or it's not what the NBA is right now. It's working, and it's working pretty well. It's been so much fun to see, and it's just, I appreciate it so much because I just love meaningful regular season basketball. And I think we're all, jonesing for about a month from now when we really get to go in the playoffs. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Are you a Coach JB apologist, or are you
Here's the thing. I was, but you can't not see what Kenny Atkinson has done and not realize that there was some element of something that JB wasn't doing. And that's the thing. It's like, you don't want, like, he got him to that point. It's a lot of Mark Jackson, Steve Kerr, and bring this guy in to get you over the hump. And you wouldn't be where you're at without JB, 100%. I think it's why Detroit is saying, hey, he's maybe just going to be this developmental coach. And he could have a nice, long career, probably making a lot of money as a developmental coach, and he'll coach a team for 4 to 5 years. And that's where it's going to be. And turn it over to somebody else. Maybe he'll get over the hump. I don't know. But I was a JB fan. I was a JB apologist for a little while. But I also kind of felt like, eventually it got to the point where time had run out. And again, you could have been the biggest JB fan in the world. I think JB probably admitted to himself, you see what Kenny Atkinson's done. There was something missing there. It just was.
So what's your take on this? So let's say the Cavs, wrap up the number 1 seed with about 8 games to go or so. Do they continue? Do they rest, or do they continue to play for the number 1 overall seed? Thinking that Oklahoma is still going to be neck and neck with them. So that's number 1. And number 2, if they have a chance to win 70 games, do they push for that too, knowing that that's even rarer than winning an NBA championship sometimes? Not that it means as much, but what are your takes on that? Do you rest once you got the number 1 seed in the East locked up, and you push for 70?
Everybody, I would. You don't want them to get rusty. You don't want to have them fall into some bad habits and things like that. Like a spring ball type thing, but like I'd have the starters play the first half, and then it's like, nope, they're sitting down at halftime. Like they're just that's what's going to happen to keep them fresh, to keep the rotations there, but also understand that once it starts, there's going to be a guy that's getting serious minutes that probably won't. What do they always say? You play 8 and you trust 7 when it comes to the playoffs. So you got your 5 starters. Hunter is going to play. Ty Jerome is going to have to play.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look and it's like, okay, is it Dean Wade? Is it Sam Merrill? And Mike, depending on matchups and things like that. But, that's pretty much going to be it. So you want to keep those guys succinct. You want to be able to keep them in the flow and the rotation of playing alongside one another too. So, yeah, I mean, I really don't. The number 1 seed, team except the Thunder. I would say any other team. But if it was the Lakers, I want the number 1 seed. If it was the Nuggets, I need the number 1 seed. I'm not disrespecting the Thunder at all, but they're kind of similar to us, where it's like they don't quite have the championship experience, and I just think it'd be more even footing, so it wouldn't matter as much. If you're playing LeBron, I'd really like home court advantage. You're playing Jokic, I want home court advantage if I can get it. And then the 70, I wouldn't even shoot for it. I just think they're already kind of in a pickle with trying to get that. So I'd sit them down definitely for the 70 and the number 1 seed, as long as it's still the Thunder pushing for it. I'm okay with the 2 overall seed home court through the Eastern Conference.
Heck, Oklahoma might not even make it out of the West. I mean, they're going to ultimately run into or have to battle with Denver. I don't know that LA's how good LA actually is, and they're going to drop here probably over the next couple weeks without LeBron in the lineup. That's certainly going to hurt their standing, but obviously once it becomes the playoffs, we know that LeBron puts a cape on and can carry you for a little while there. So we'll have to see how that is. I mean, it's just the historic fashion of this season for the Cavs. I don't want to see it come to an end without, possibly hoisting a banner and holding the Larry O'Brien.
Finals for me. I mean, that's kind of where, and that's hard because you're telling them, I expect them to go through the Celtics in a 7-game series. Like, I'm not discrediting how good the Celtics are. I get why the Celtics are the favorite in Vegas. And they've, had our number this year. And we've had some good battles with them, certainly. But I think overall, from the games we played in them, I would give the slight edge to Boston. I'm not, well, some people would say I'm an idiot, but I get it. Like I get why the Boston Celtics are the Celtics. So, but yeah, as good as this team is, I think at the end of the day, we're all going to sit here and say, what? It's just, it's going to be a shame if we don't get Cavs Celtics in the East. And I really think it's going to be a shame if we don't get at least 2 of the 3 of the Nuggets, Lakers, and Thunder out West. That's what everybody wants to see. I know Adam Silver's thinking about it, all these ideas. Just give us all that. Do a playing tournament with them. Just put those 5 in a hat, Adam. Let them all play one another, and the 2 come out, and they get to go play in the NBA Finals. But those are the 5 teams I think have the best look for the championship. So that's what we want to see.
It'd be even better if they put them in a bubble in Atlanta and made them play those that tournament. Is it too soon?
Back to the bubble, we can do that. No fans, just have them all sitting in there and all that. Today is the anniversary, so I guess it makes sense.
My gosh, I didn't even realize today was the anniversary. That's crazy. Last thing on the Cavs is Mobley. Would you say he's the favorite for DPOY?
Yeah, Jackson got hurt now too. So I mean, obviously Wemby was running away; they won't qualify. Now Jaren Jackson is hurt. So that's how it's going to go. And I think the Cavs. It was going to get really expensive anyway, but you have the accelerators. Evan Mobley was always going to make, defense and all that kind of stuff. I think it's now interesting that Kyrie Irving is out. Does that open up another guard spot for Darius Garland to sneak onto the all? And I say sneak relative. I'm going to try to be disrespectful to him, but he's had a great season. But now if he makes 3rd team All NBA, that hits the Supermax. We see what the Celtics are at. We know the Celtics cannot survive, and they will not survive this, and that's why the team's trying to be sold. The Cavs are going to run into us. Dan Gilbert can pay all the money in the world. I get that he's got it. There are just so many more penalties in place now with this new collective bargaining agreement, with the mid-level exception, with the repeater tax, all these things. That's why this move for DeAndre Hunter was genius. for the Cavs to get back under the tax this year, to help kind of stave that off. But yeah, I mean, I think for sure he's going to win DPOY. And then just to see what else, like you're staring down the barrel of 3 guys making all NBA in some form or fashion, like that money's going to start adding up pretty quick.
I hadn't even thought about that'll put them over the apron because they tried so hard with these trades to actually get under the apron. But you're right. That's a great point. Yeah.
I get where the NBA wanted to set this up. They didn't want the super teams anymore. And it's like, go to the NBA and be like, listen, we actually built this team. You know what I mean? It's not like we went out and got 2 guys to come in on free agency. We literally traded for Jared Allen. We drafted these 2 guys. Yes, you made your big trade for, like, it doesn't feel so manufactured. And granted, the vast majority of the rotation was not drafted here. They traded for Strus. They traded for Hunter. But, like, they found Ty Jerome. They found Sam Merrill, and it's like that's going to help because they're going to have cheaper deals on those kind of guys. But I do think the NBA overcorrected. I really do. I think they really massively overcorrected on what they wanted to do to limit the big teams. And because here's my thing. There's only 30 teams in the NBA. There's only 10 of them that compete on any given year. There's 30 elite players in the NBA, and they're not all going to get on that same 10 teams, but it's like, you have elite guys. Like, really, you can make the case that probably, 20 of the 30 teams really feel like they have an elite franchise player. That number might even be higher than 20, So it's like, I think they overcorrected with trying to knock all this stuff down and not say that you could have all these. And I'm just saying that as a bougie Cavs fan because my team's really good and I don't want to see them get torn down and have to pay a bunch of money. So I guess the rich and the poor, the divide there in the NBA has been pretty big. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, wow, like how far have the Nets fallen when they they get what was the name of the owner? I know it's like the Russian guy or whatever, but coming in and then they're like, we're gonna get in what they get, Pierce, Garnett, and Allen.
Well, I think Allen did go there. Joe Johnson was there too, but
Okay.
they basically ripped away the Celtics that won that championship, and that went up. Like, I don't want to say super teams in LA because, like, I mean, the Clippers were an unmitigated disaster, but that was just the injury. LeBron with AD, the Lakers, they won it. Okay, fine. Like, the Nuggets are another good example of a team that they kind of feel like they're a super team, but they built it the right way. And I guess, like, if you really want to call it, the Celtics did too. They drafted Brown and Tatum. They found Peyton Pritchard. Al Horford's just been there for 400 years. So, I mean, it's just like, they just got that good. All they got was their version of Mitchell is Porzingis. That's what they got. So, and I think it's probably shown out, like the 76ers too. If you go that way, and granted, they drafted Embiid, but like it's just manufacture all this stuff. It just doesn't really seem to work out that way.
Yeah, kind of crazy how that happens. All right, so it's the normal hottest, most hated topic in Cleveland, the Browns. It's either you love them, but you hate to talk about them because normally it's been an abject failure on so many levels for so many seasons. The Myles Garrett saga ends out of seemingly nowhere, where his camp is saying we're not signing. He wants to be traded. We're closing the door on contract. You got Andrew Berry coming out. You got Kevin Stefanski talking about him still being with the team, this, that, and the other. I guess the first thing is, what changed? What changed?
And a check and a lot of money. I mean, I think it surpassed what I thought Myles was going to get. I didn't think it was going to be 40. I thought it was going to be 36. The injury guarantee versus fully guaranteed, like that, I mean, it's kind of one and the same, but I thought he was shooting for 100. It's 20 million over that. Like that, they literally, it feels a lot like the Deshaun Watson deal where they had to blow him out of the water, and they did. They came in and they said, we're going to give you an offer that you cannot turn down. And I just think the Browns also made that, I know this has kind of been reported on and it's kind of been leaked out where the Browns made their case and they said to him, like, dude, we're not trading you. Like, it's just not going to happen. We can't do that. I was steadfast they weren't going to do it before June 1st. I thought there was a world they could, but they were definitely not going to do it before June 1st. So they probably sat down and said, listen, man, it's not going to happen. You're under team control. This is not the NBA. I know you're represented by Clutch, who started in the NBA. It ain't going to work this way. So you might as well take this deal. And I think probably at the end of the day, the reassurance of Myles Garrett's large shoes for a second. And if I was in his situation to see everything that had happened, you got to realize, number one, people get upset when I say it, you, in a way, for trying. They were void of a quarterback. I mean, again, I was a Baker Mayfield fan and defender, and I famously said once that I thought you could win a Super Bowl with Baker Mayfield. And I still think he can. But they literally went all in for the one position that you would go all in for. It went belly up. Deshaun Watson is not a good person. Like, whatever. You set all that aside. But they swung and missed for the right thing there. Juncture to just, if I was Myles, all I want to hear is that you're not going to stop. Because it'd be easy to sit there and say, we spent a lot of money, all these picks, it's time for us to cool things down. No, you tell me that you're going to keep your foot on that gas, you're going to get after this, and you're going to go find it. Like, we're not going to stop. You're going to go find a quarterback. Well, whatever you believe on Kirk Cousins, whatever you believe on the drafted guys, like, as long as I heard that from ownership or from the front office to say, listen, we're not going to stop trying, then I'm in, and I'll sign the richest contract in, defensive player or non-quarterback, NFL history. That's a nice little cherry on top of that. But I think as long as it came across, number one, we're not trading you, and number two, we are committed to fixing this. Like, that's all he could really ask for, and I'm sure that's what he got.
Yeah, those are great points. Well, does the salary cap mean anything anymore? Like, how are the Browns doing this? About 2 of the last 4 years, 5 years, they, sign these massive contracts and somehow they keep pushing money down the line. Is this really going to hamstring us here in about 5 to 6 years where we will have to do a rebuild no matter where we're at?
No, because the way that it's always been explained to me is they're writing themselves interest-free loans because the easy way to think about it is like this. So the money that they gave Deshaun Watson, right? It's worth $1 today. When the salary cap keeps going up, it's only 80 cents in the future. So you're saved yourself 20 cents right there, right? Because they look at the percentages, right? So like, I don't even remember the figure, but I think Deshaun Watson accounts for like 35% of the cap. Well, in 2 years, it'll be 32% of the cap. Then it'll be 31%. Like, it just keeps going down and they're able to move. What works is Jimmy Haslam is willing to keep cutting checks and write cash. I know there's people, colleague of mine, James Rapine, he covers the Bengals, and the big narrative out of Cincinnati is that the Brown family, they have a cash problem, and James is fighting that narrative to say, no, they don't. And I kind of look at him and I go, well, prove me the other way. Like, you got to have the money on hand for these restructures. So it is sustainable to a point. Eventually, you got to pay the piper. But that's where you need your draft picks back, and you got to hit on some of these. Like, you got to get these guys on rookie deals, cheap deals. And I think you ask yourself this, like, what positions are you going to invest in? And I think you invested in the right ones. You paid a wide receiver, you paid a corner, you paid a pass rusher. Those are the positions, give me an offensive lineman here and there. If DeJuan Jones can get over this injury and this weight stuff, then he becomes, a potential big piece there. You're paid up in the right spots, and those are the spots you want to win. Now, the biggest position is the one that you don't have and the one that you're going to pay eventually. That's when here's the thing. You look at the 49ers. What are they doing? They have been ravaged over the past 4 days. Trading Debo, Dre Greenlaw leaves. Why they let Hufanga leave, I have no idea. But, all these guys are leaving because they know they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy, because they're going to have to pay him his money coming up. So, yeah, it's sustainable to a point. And then once that rookie gets off that rookie deal, you're going to be hurt. But that's the thing. Imagine this. Imagine if the Browns could find a guy for 3 years, because everything else is good right now. If you could just find a guy on the cheap for 3 years, this team would be competing. But yeah, it's sustainable to a point for sure.
Kenny Pickens, we got our guy.
Yeah.
Oh, good. It's like, it's an upgrade over DTR. It's like, like, this afternoon they're like, oh, Joe Milton's going to be available. Like, oh, go do that. I kind of think I know what Kenny Pickett is. Like, take a swing on. I had somebody texting me today about Trey Lance. They're like, well, just go do that. I'm like, I would like Pickett. I get it. First round pick was not a good draft. He's at least started games. It's an upgrade over DTR. At the end of the day, it's better than that. You want to try to catch lightning in a bottle, I'd maybe go with somebody else, but I wanted Justin Fields here. I wanted him here last year. That didn't happen. I would have taken him again, but here we are.
So who is your ideal quarterback now? Now that some of them are off the board, who do you want the Browns to get for, let's say, not through the draft? Who do you want them to get to be their bridge?
And not like Kirk Cousins. He's going to come here anyway. Like, the shoulder injury, that's why I sucked. I'm like, well, yeah, you're also, 35 years old now? Like, that's not going to fix anything. He knows Kevin Stefanski's offense. Yeah, well, like, so does Nick Mullins. Like, okay, great. Like, what is okay, so he can run the offense, or he knows that. Like, it's hard for me to not pick him because it's not going to be Aaron Rodgers. I don't want Russell Wilson. Brissett signed today. I would have been interested in Danny Dimes, but obviously he's got a chance to go start and beat Anthony Richardson out. Like, hell no to Carson Wentz. Like, I think Flacco is just done. I just don't know if you can get the magic out of that well again. So it's like I'm kind of resigned to Kirk Cousins just as far as the veteran kind of route goes. But I think that was Kenny Pickett's spot. So if you had to pick somebody there, like, I would have listened to Mac Jones, but they go with Pickett. They'll wait. I think they're just going to wait out Atlanta. They're going to eventually, I think, release him probably, and then you can pick him up on the cheap, and then hopefully find your guy in the draft.
Who is the guy?
Bad. He's going to go one. It's either going to be to Tennessee or it's either going to be the Giants if they trade up. I think it's going to be the Giants that trade up. Yeah. It's, again, oh, well, he'd be Bo Nix or he'd be the 7 in the past one or whatever. There's just some things about Cam Ward that I think you can win with. Shador, I just think there's more work there. I've always maintained, like, when it comes to quarterbacks for me, there's a parallel universe that Josh Rosen is a 3-time Super Bowl champion. They're just like there is,
Oh my God.
It's Patrick Mahomes could have failed. Like, it's just so much about the place that you go, the system that you run, and emphasizing what you do well, and creating all that. So, like, when people write off Shador Sanders, like, oh, he's not going to be very good. Like, I don't believe that. Like, I think anybody, it could work. I would say anybody. But for a lot of guys, there can be a system that works. I just think there's more. And I'll just default to a guy with a stronger arm in Cam Ward. I love his release. I think his footwork's a little cleaner. The pocket presence a little bit better. I don't want him starting. I don't want either one of them to start in week 1. I want them to sit these guys maybe in for the whole season if you could stand to do it. Sit them, work on that kind of stuff, but I'd be over the moon for Cam Ward. And that's also, everybody's talking about this 26 draft class and Nussmeier and what's Arch going to be and all that. I'm not going to lie. There's not a lot of guys in that draft just watching this past year of college football that's like, oh, we got to stop everything. Here comes the next Trevor Lawrence. Here comes the next Andrew Luck. Like, I don't know if I see that. So if you got your opportunity to take him, if somehow Tennessee screws this up and he's sitting there at 2, or if the Browns want to go up and get him, I'd love to get Cam Ward here. I would.
Well, right. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong in thinking this, but I'm not playing for next year's draft. I don't want to suck again this year. Give me a freaking quarterback that can play. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be ready and they're going to be able to pull what Jaden Daniels did this past season. I don't know if they're going to be able to do what CJ Stroud did, but I'm going to take my chance now. I'm not going to try and bank on like, oh, I'm going to end up winning 7 games, and now I have to give up a bunch of assets to move up the draft board to get the guy I really want at the top of the draft. No one's going to let you get, like, look, when Peyton Manning was going to be number 1, I know there was a Ryan Leaf discussion, but think about the price to get, like, I know this is a Hall of Famer. I got to get this guy. That's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I'm thinking, look, you need a quarterback. We're at number 2. Take a quarterback.
This conversation with somebody about, and they kind of do like some scouting, some stuff like that.
Okay,
And
okay.
it's an interesting time in the NFL where, and I think the number is really more close to 20 teams would tell you that they have a franchise quarterback. And yeah, it might be Trevor Lawrence, it might be Kyler Murray, it might be Dak Prescott. And those are guys that'll get moved off. We saw Geno Smith get moved. They couldn't get the deal done and they kind of move off. But it's like, it's a little bit of a spoil of riches right now where there are a lot, like really at this juncture, even as we get ready for this draft, there's only 4 teams that are really legitimately searching for a quarterback. Now, it doesn't mean that in a couple years the Rams aren't going to need one when Matt Stafford is done. It doesn't mean that in a couple of years that they're going to have to retread if Kyler Murray's not the guy or, Sam Darnold in Seattle. That'll happen, but it's like, I just feel like, in the NFL, and I think maybe it has to do with maybe shorter times that some of these guys are playing. I just feel like there was times where you just had this mass exodus and there'd be like 5 quarterbacks that all retired in 1 year or fell off. You don't really have that. And it's like there's 5 or 6 guys on each side of it, of the AFC and the NFC, that basically run it, and they're not going anywhere. So it really is just the fight of the next group to be able to go find it. So it's like, to your point, there could be 5 or 6 guys coming out next year. There might only be 4 teams that are going to go need to get a quarterback, and that's why maybe you don't even have to move back up. And that's why I'm with you. Draft one now, see what he's got, or at least get him into practice and figure out what he's got. And if you need to go back and do it again, do it again. Go draft somebody else.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what do you think about, so the quarterback carousel? So Geno Smith is now with the Raiders, right? I'm getting my people straight here. Sam Darnold to Seattle. Is he going to turn back into a pumpkin?
Who's he going to throw to other than Jackson Smith and Jigba? I mean, DK, that trade was interesting. They have some offensive line problems. And I'm a big Kenneth Walker fan, but he was really hurt last year. Like, yeah, and then the ultimate question is what is he? I know Clint Kubiak is there, and they were together in San Francisco,
Right.
and that's like maybe to try to some of that connection. But it's like, obviously Kevin O'Connell is the wizard, and he knows what the hell he's doing. That's just one of those situations where I get nervous when you pull a quarterback out of a system, because then you really realize Kevin O'Connell's a freaking genius, and that's probably a lot of what Sam Darnold looked at last year.
Yeah, I saw ESPN had a good article where they, Sam Darnold was only like 16th in QBR. They won really with their defense in Minnesota. So he's going to be exposed more in Seattle. So it sounds, their analysis was it was a big overpay for when you had a quarterback there that knew your system, exactly to your point.
People always say, well, like the going rate and what you're paying and all that. It's like, look at it this way. He got what, 33 million? It was like 3 years, 100 million, same deal that Baker Mayfield got. It's like, first off, would you put Sam Darnold on the same level of Baker Mayfield? Me personally, probably not. But then if you look at the top tier guys, and I'll just say 50 million. So I'm not good at this, so I'll just try this. Like, that's 3/5, right, of what a guy is. But do you really think that Sam Darnold is 3/5 of Josh Allen? I don't. Do you really think Sam Darnold is 3/5 of what Patrick Mahomes is? And I know Mahomes paid a little bit less, but like, I'm like, probably not. So that's where I get on the overpay, and I'm like, yeah, that's where sometimes I don't buy the like, oh, that's the going rate. It's is he worth 3/5 of what Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson is? And I just don't think he is.
Yeah, I'm not sold on him. I think that he had some luck, he had some magic last year in Minnesota, but that end of the season, that was the Sam Darnold that we had all come to know and love or hate. I don't know which one it is. Daniel Jones going to the Colts. How bad does that pick of Anthony Richardson look?
That's the kind of you talk about. We're talking about quarterbacks in the parallel universe and all that kind of stuff. Like, that guy has every physical tool under the sun. Like, what doesn't work, right? That I think is, Steichen. I've just been critical of Shane Steichen a little bit. Like, he's got weapons. Jonathan Taylor. He's got Pittman, who I'm a defender of. He's got, like, you sit there and you're like, what doesn't work? And you're like, it's probably just him. And quarterback competitions are such a sham. Why did the Colts bring in Daniel Jones? Because they don't believe in Anthony Richardson anymore.
Yes.
And they're like, well, if he could recapture this, if you couldn't get it out of him in 2 years. Now, granted, again, he's battled injuries.
Because he's not a quarterback. He's a running back that's thrown himself all over the place. No wonder he's injured. Concussions, shoulders, this, that. Dude, throw the ball.
They know what they got, and that's they try to do this with the competition. Obviously, Daniel Jones feels like there's a chance he wins that. They give him $14 million, I think, tip in their hand, and they could say, well, that'll bring the best out of him. And it's like, when you got two, you don't have one. So if you got two guys in there and you're trying to do this open competition, you don't have one. And really, that's the other rough thing about Anthony Richardson. That guy should still be developing, and now he's going to be doing what? Losing reps in training camp and in preseason to this, I would say, sham of a quarterback competition. Right. But I just, what you got. You don't have it. They're kind of stuck there. And it's, again, did they reach because they had to? Did they reach because everybody else was grabbing quarterbacks? Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with this draft class that we're looking at, right? It is Shador and Cam up top. Last year I think is probably more of a prime example. You had Caleb, you had Drake May, you had obviously Jaden Daniels, you had
Bo
Nix, Michael Penix, right? One of those guys is going to suck. It's just the odds tell you that one of them is not going to be good. Which one? I don't know. Honestly, the odds on might be Caleb Williams at this point. I don't know. We'll see. But
because of the system and the team he's on.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the same thing. He's got all that there. They finally, made a great hire and made the best hire of the offseason, in my opinion. So, yeah, I mean, and there's a world that, again, 4 of those 5 guys work. You just want to make sure you get one of the 4. It almost doesn't really kind of matter which one it is, but you want to get one with the right system, with the right coach, and try to get the fit there.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, what are the Steelers going to do at quarterback?
Russ. They can run it back to Russ if they don't get this Aaron Rodgers thing done. I mean, if you're Aaron Rodgers, would you rather play for the Giants or the Steelers?
Steelers.
My answer is the Steelers, 100%. Malik Neighbors is fine. You got a lame duck coach and a lame duck GM, but both those guys certainly should have been fired, after the season. They didn't. Better weapons now in Pittsburgh, better defense. I don't understand why Aaron Rodgers isn't begging the Steelers to get this deal done. It sounds like he's anti. We're just trying to get money out of it. I don't know. But if I had to guess, and I just think it's probably just I cannot for the life of me envision Aaron Rodgers in a Steelers uniform. I'm going to say he goes to the Giants. I think Russ goes back to the Steelers. And
that would be
honestly
great. That would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please go back to the Steelers, Russ. We love you there.
Well, I would love to see Aaron Rodgers. I think he's washed up. Let him go to the Steelers and ruin that franchise. Although nothing ruins the Steelers franchise, so that's just my hope.
I was going to burn that down to the ground. It would probably be him, because you see Tomlin yelling at him for doing his Pat McAfee hit while they're in the middle of a meeting or something like that.
I would love to see that.
They show up at Latrobe, PA, where they do their training camp. They're like, "Where's Aaron Rodgers?" Like, "Oh, he's doing ayahuasca in the Himalayan mountains." Like, "I'll be back next week." Oh, okay. I'm sure Mike Tomlin would be real measured and accepting of all that. But I don't know. Maybe that's what Rodgers needs. Maybe he needs a guy that's going to break a foot off in his rear end, and maybe that's Mike Tomlin. But that would just be that of all the things that Mike Tomlin's been Teflon about. And trust me, there's a lot of people in Pittsburgh that can't stand Mike Tomlin. They've wanted him fired for years after years. But that would be, it almost wouldn't be fair to Mike Tomlin that that's what takes him down. You know what I mean? After all he's been through, it's Aaron Rodgers is finally the thing that takes you down. So maybe it's me wishing that too. I have a lot of respect for Mike Tomlin. I don't want to see him go down at the hands of Aaron Rodgers. So
that's interesting. That's interesting. Okay, we're running a little bit long, but I wanted to ask you just a couple of things. One, so you and I kind of have a sort of a connection, a crossover, not just the Rizzo family, because I got to work with his dad in my first broadcasting, kind of, sort of. And it also relates to something, of you. You did a tryout for the Lake Erie Crushers. I moved to Virginia in 2003. So this was after I'd already moved. And my buddy's like, "Oh, you got to listen to this thing on the Land on Demand, the classic section." And I'm listening to this and First of all, Gerard and Rizzo are cracking up the whole time. And I was just like, was this for real? I didn't know specifically. I mean, you went and you did this open try. I guess it was an open tryout for the Crushers.
The backstory was I played baseball, wrestled, and played football my whole life. And
Okay.
I played football for a couple years in college, and then I got done. And I had played on some rec league teams and all that with my buddies. Well, all my roommates in college were baseball players. There's one
Okay.
that worked at the radio, and he's like, "Hey, we got a house. You want to move in?" And I said, "Sure." So I moved in with all these guys. They played D3 baseball, and they go, "We have a summer team that's technically semi-pro. It really is just glorified, hardball, overhand, all that wood bat league." And they go, "We need a catcher." And I was like, "Well, I'll do it." And I caught my whole life or whatever. So I played that for years after college. And I was playing that when I was on the really big show, and Riz and Gerard and Casey used to give me so much crap, like, grow up, give it up, you're going to get hurt. They'd catch me out during the show, like looking up baseball pants and new bats. And so they would just make fun of me all the time for it, which was great. So then we found out that the Lake Erie Crushers, and they still do this, they're a Frontier independent team
Right.
every year. And I think it's probably, honestly, coming up soon. They have an open tryout. Anybody under the sun, I think it's a $50 or whatever it is fee, you could just go to the open tryout. So we got in contact with the Crushers, like, do you care if we broadcast and Matt tries out? And they go, sure. But here's the cool thing. Nobody knew. The coaches were not told, like, hey, this is just some radio guy, like, screwing around. They literally thought I was there to try to make the team. So I went out there. I was obviously much younger than I am now, better shape than I am now. But yeah, I did all right. I hit pretty well. That's always kind of been my thing. And I just didn't want to run, and I didn't want to catch. So I was like, I'll try out as a first baseman, which was like the other thing that I did. And I think I did all right. And then the show was wrapping up. So what it was there was a tryout in the morning. And then if they selected you, you got to play in a showcase game that afternoon.
Okay.
And then they would take somebody from the game and you'd make the roster. Well, we were done at 1:00. So I did the tryout and the workout, and I'm packing the stuff up. And I don't know, somebody told me that they wanted me to stay for the showcase. I was like, no. And I was like, no. We're done. Like, we did our thing. Like, we're going to move on, And that was Riz's thing. He's like, get out of here. I don't need you thinking about him any more than you already do. Like, give up the dream. But no, that was of all the memories I have on RBS, that is one of the top ones for me. I had a lot of fun that day. It was cold. It was really cold. But it was a lot of fun for sure.
Oh man, that's great. Yeah, I got to experience the traveling with the Frontier League with the Canton Crocodiles.
Mm-hmm.
And did my first broadcasting with them when, unfortunately, Riz's dad got sick, and I happened to be in the right place at the right time as an intern and got to travel with them. And then eventually, toward the end of the season, his dad comes back, and we were up in London, Ontario, the London Werewolves, and eating at I think we went to a Big Boys, and eating at a Big Boys with Riz's dad.
That's a story, though. Unfortunately, it passed by the time I got there, but I've heard a lot about JR and just the stories that Riz tells me about him. And yeah, I really do wish I could have met him. I know Tony, I know his boys too. And from everything Tony's told me, there's a lot of the old man and those guys too. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And then we were in O'Fallon, Missouri. And that was when I think Jack Clark was coaching for the O'Fallon, Missouri team in the Frontier League. And so, yeah, some interesting times there. You went to Baldwin Wallace, and have you been keeping track of their the women's basketball team?
Yes, they're advanced in the D3 playoffs, and Coach Hare I called so many games, for obviously the men and the women, but the consistency that they had even back when I was still in school. And now BW's really turned themselves into a baseball powerhouse, a wrestling powerhouse. But the women's basketball program has always been just so stellar. And I saw they had the 2 games at Earthsprung, and I was happy to see they advanced. So yeah, it's been awesome to see, because they've just been the model of consistency. It really starts with Coach Hare. She's so good. And she really, if you're a girls basketball player and, you're not, again, of that D1 or D2, like, BW's the place to go. Like they've just turned out so much talent, and they've been again some of the most talking about trips that I've made to Hope, Michigan, and all that stuff covering the women's basketball team in the playoffs. Been a lot of fun. So yeah, I saw the advance. It's really awesome. I'm rooting for them.
Yeah, that is great. Well, I was happy to see that they beat Washington and Lee, take out the ODAC opponent there. They've got a player, this girl, Mary Slicener. She's unreal. Especially for that level. I think the thing is, though, she's only 6'1", and that's maybe why she can't play at a higher division. But, Randolph-Macon, who I've been broadcasting for this is the 17th season of doing the games, they're going on. They're playing in Gettysburg. But we've got NYU in that part of the bracket.
Okay. Yeah, and it's so interesting too to see, like, because they would do the home games and you'd play twice there if you advanced, or if it was that, because there was one year we played I can't remember, but the home team lost, so there was the two teams that were going to play in the second game. They were two traveling teams, so that was like awkward. But yeah, there was a lot. I had a lot of fun trips, and there was some. God, I remember Hope. There was another team that it might have. I don't say it was Rochester Jefferson. There was another team that they just always seem to be running into come the postseason, and they were really solid. But yeah, the BW Wins program has been stellar for a long time.
Yeah, that'd be. I don't know. I'll have to look at the bracket. See how far Randolph-Macon can make it. I know this is the first time they've been in the Sweet 16 since 2007, I believe. So before I started doing it, and they've made it as far in maybe the 06 season. They lost in the national final to Milliken. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. That would have been Yeah, I don't know. They had one bad day apparently, and so I don't know. But yeah, so from one, you're an official Yellow Jacket. I'm an honorable mention Yellow Jacket here.
There you
go. So we got that going. Just thought to ask you about that. But we are, we're running a little bit long here. So I just wanted to find out, and as you talk about stealing show bits, I also am a fan of Family Guy, and the guys on the next level. They do the Going nuCLEar segment once a week, or the Grind My Gear segment. I picked Going nuCLEar because I'm always yelling about something, and so Matt, I wanted to give you an opportunity here to tell us what has you going nuCLEar this week.
That's a good one. I mean, the first thing when you kind of mentioned we're going to do this, I was like, how the national media has not just warmed up to the Cavs, but it's also like we're starting to get more national games. And there's an element of like, that's fine. Leave it that way. I don't really I'm fine being the underdog type of thing. I got to tell you beyond that, though, the replays and the refereeing in the NBA, and maybe it's just because it's the Cavs. Maybe it's just because Darius Garland keeps getting hit in the face. Maybe it's because they're just getting these bad calls. They have got to have some sort of reform here. They've got to be able to fix. I really think the coaches challenge, like they have this. And granted, Kenny Atkinson's been great. I think I saw the stat. He's like 40 something and 20 in challenges, and I'm like, that's insane. That we're at this point. There really is a challenge a game, and I know if you get it and you win it, then you get another one. Like, I think the NBA's got to figure something on this refereeing, and I really think the easy answer. This is crazy to say. They need to add another referee. Have four.
Why not?
And it's just like you play it like hockey. Play it like hockey. You have I know linesmen are different than the referees, but you can play the court the same way that hockey. You have one down low, one here, one there. Like, I don't understand why they just don't add an extra one. And granted, you don't necessarily have maybe the breakaways that you do in hockey versus like basketball, things like that. But some of these calls, and it's just when it's so egregious and just so, you missed it. Like, it's slowing the game down. It's just when you got games with 42 seconds to go and it's taking them 7 minutes to get the game done. Like, it's not a good TV product. And I know there's a lot of talk about the ratings and what's going on with the TV on the side of the NBA, but that's definitely probably it for me. So it's like, I'm upset with the Cavs not getting the respect they're deserving, but they're also not getting any calls out there. And that probably ticks me off a little bit more than that.
All right. I agree. All right, Mike, what you got? What's got you going nuCLEar this week?
Yeah, on the same vein too, with all the successful challenges, it means these are all the calls that the refs are missing too. And there are a lot. So yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to keep mine short. What has me going nuCLEar, non-sports related, daylight savings time. Just get rid of it already. Like, come on. Like, I love the extra hour of daylight we're getting now, but still, come on, we're done.
That's pretty succinct, Mike. I'm very impressed with that.
I mean, it is 9:15, Ethan. So
Is it? I don't even know.
And the Cavs are up now with less than a minute to go.
Wait, that's going to take another 10 minutes for them to finish the last 30 seconds, Mike.
True.
I think that's what's going on here. No, okay, all right, appreciate that. What has me going nuCLEar? You kind of touched on this, Matt. You talked about the national media coverage. It's just everything. Cleveland is the butt of everybody's jokes in the national media. Or am I missing something? Because it sure as hell seems like whenever there's a chance to use Cleveland as a punching bag, the people on Get Up, the people, the cowards, all these people are Skip Bayless. They're all going to revert to, hey, we got to get a joke out there. Cleveland. I know they're good for one. They stink. And I'm tired of it. I mean, it's just disrespectful. Just because one of our franchises is, well, kind of the pits, doesn't mean the whole city represents that. And there's a lot of other teams that are pretty darn bad too. I don't know, Jets, they're pretty bad. There's others out there. I mean, look at what Nico Harrison did in Dallas. So
hopefully it changes. We just need some other teams to really start screwing up pretty bad, and then we'll get off that list for sure.
I think that would be good. I do think that would be good if some other teams would get off the schneid there. Come on, you got to step up. Take one for the team, I guess. Take one for the team. All right, Matt. Once again, thank you so much. Tell everybody again where can they find you, or when are you going to be on again?
We're at Matt Fontaine 83. We usually tape our shows on Thursday. They air about 8 o'clock Thursday night, and then starting this week, you can see it on the Rock Entertainment Network 4 o'clock on Friday. Just follow at Matt Fontaine 83. I have some ESPN shows coming up as well, so I always tweet out when it's going on. So you guys can just check me out there. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Oh, well, we appreciate having you on. And I put up here, this is also on Twitter at Matt Fontana Show for your show on Big Play. But I did want to share that as well. Mike, got any big plans for the rest of the weekend?
Trying to get over this cold that I've had all week too, which is why I think I sound like William Dafoe from Spider-Man. I'm sick of feeling. I think it's daylight savings time did it to me. So
that's what it is. You're going to blame. I think that's a good call there. That is a good call there. All right, then. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. Mike, thank you as always. And once again, folks, you can find Going nuCLEar full-blown coverage of the land, the best doggone podcast in the land, as part of the Fanatical Elves Network, a subsidiary of the Fans First Sports Network. Find the podcast on all your favorite platforms, Spotify, Apple, et cetera, et cetera. And so, for Matt Fontana and Mike Rasinski, I'm Ethan Greenberg, and you've been tuned into Going nuCLEar, full-blown coverage of the land.